I don't understand what happened at some point where we decided that the Chicago Bulls were just going to live forever as the glorious franchise above all blame. When you look at super teams and you talk about who started it, whose fault is it, let's remember Dennis Rodman was acquired for Will Perdue, the backup center, and some cash. Dennis Rodman came over to the Bulls because he wanted a new deal. Dennis Rodman was the upgrade. He was the four-time defending rebounding leader in the NBA. 4 straight years, he led the league in rebounds. He goes to the Bulls team that was already stacked with Kukoc, Pippen, and Jordan, and then they go on to history. We sit here and we look at that little historic moment for the Bulls like it's absolutely perfect, and we can't say anything negative about it. But Michael Jordan was the first one to do it. If we're going to sit here and say LeBron right now goes around and says, here's who I want to play with, you want to tell me if Twitter existed back when Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman aligned, that we wouldn't have destroyed the franchise and the players for doing exactly what they did?
So Dennis Rodman signed this big deal out of free agency, right? All those 3 guys together were free agents, and they decided to team up with the Chicago Bulls. That's what you're saying,
well,
right?
No. But if we're going to we're going to go super team. Okay, Kevin Durant sits here and joins an already existing team, and it makes him a super team.
So you admit that this wasn't built by Chicago. That's what you just said. You're rolling with me that he was acquired via trade.
I think you're lost in the wrong definition of a super team. Because in today's world, we have defined the Golden State Warriors as a super team, when in fact they were assembled the correct way. They were assembled through the draft, and one player came over. One guy was like, I want to go join that. How's that any different than one guy saying, you know what, trade me to Chicago. That's where I want to be.
He was traded. He did not acquire. They didn't have talks at USA Basketball on a banana boat and said, hey, we're going to join up and play together.
So I know you played with everybody. When you played with Rodman, did you ask him about whether or not he demanded that trade? We don't know. All we know is that
it was a trade. It doesn't matter.
The Spurs took Perdue and cash for Rodman. You want to tell me that he didn't insist on that?
It did not matter. It was a trade. LeBron James, you had the best player in his prime in the league at the same time that joined another 2 players, which, might I add, I loved it. I'm not mad at it. It was great for competition.
Just answer me this. If Golden State today is a super team by most people's definition, how are they any different than Rodman and the Bulls?
If they were able to trade under the cap for a guy like Boogie Cousins or trade for, Kevin Durant, nobody would have a gripe, because guess what? The other team, the Pistons, had to agree to get something back in return. So then you would look at, in this situation, that the Pistons are to blame and not the actual players. So you said, who created it? In a sense, to your scenario, you can blame the Pistons for actually sending Rodman over. And if I'm not mistaken, Dennis Rodman, he rebounds, right?
Yes.
So
he was an upgrade over Horace Grant.
Whoa. He rebounds. So I would define Dennis Rodman safely as one of the, if not the greatest rebounder and one of the greatest defenders of all time. So that is a role player, an amazing role player.
He's a Hall of Fame caliber player. And by the way,
Hall of Fame role player.
By the way, he came from
the greatest rebounder ever.
By the way, hold on. He came from the Spurs, not the Pistons. He went to the Spurs first before he went to the Lakers.
So you blame the Spurs.
Right. So how is it any different than if Kawhi turns around and goes over to the Rockets? We're going to say, oh my God, same team, same situation. It's a trade going to an existing team.
No, you won't, because they were signed out of, they were traded rather than just signed and having a choice of mind in which they could work on the same team. And Dennis Rodman is a role player. This wasn't Gary Payton coming over. This wasn't Magic Johnson coming over. This wasn't another, I don't want to say that he was a role player, another star, another guard, another Scottie Pippen on the team that joined the lineup.
This was the most dominant rebounder. He was the most dominant at that skill in the NBA for 4 straight years.
That's
not a skill.
This wasn't Isaiah Thomas coming over. Isaiah Thomas signs
so what about
super team.
Fine, Mr. LA. What about Shaq and Kobe? How's Shaq and Kobe not part of this conversation? Shaq leaves Orlando, goes to L.A.
He signed via free agency, right?
Okay, so?
Did he?
Well, wouldn't you say that there's a difference?
Traded. Again, they were traded in an era before Twitter when we have no idea what the insistence was.
You can't just blame it all on Twitter, because I think there's a difference here, and I hate to say it again, but I'm agreeing with Ryan here.
No, you don't hate that. Don't say that, right?
You really think Dennis Rodman sat around and said, you know, and if Dennis Rodman had gone to the Spurs and said, you know what, competitive balance matters to me. I don't want to go join the Bulls. I want to fight the Bulls. You don't think they want to block that trade?
The question is, who do we blame for these super teams? Fault, whatever you want to call it. And he's saying LeBron. And I think it's a difference here. And it's not social media. It's the fact that they plan to create and form this team in Miami. They created this.
He just said that his sources, his quotes, he's going by social media. Are those your reports? Are they coming from Twitter?
I'm saying that today's world defines a super team as greatness joining greatness. That's what they define it as. You cannot look look at me and tell me that the Spurs trading Rodman for Will Perdue, who at the time was a backup center, and cash. That's it. You can't tell me that wasn't a play for greatness joining greatness.
I don't think it's greatness joining greatness. I think it's just the I wouldn't phrase it greatness joining greatness, because then that does go to your Shaq and Kobe going together. It's these teams morphing
so 4 straight years as the leader at
so
his
did
skill.
Dennis Rodman lead the Pistons? Did he lead the Pistons? We love his rebounding, greatest ever. Did he lead the Pistons? Was he Isaiah Thomas?
He wasn't asked to be a leader.
No.
Is Kevin Durant the leader of Golden State? Does Kevin Durant lead Golden State?
Fitzy, get your track shoes off, Carl Lewis. Did he lead?
Oh, that is rich coming from you today.
The Pistons. Did he lead the Pistons?
He was one of the leaders of the Pistons.
No, I didn't say one of. It's a yes or no question.
Yeah, he's a leader. How is he allowed to? If you ask Detroit Pistons fans,
I can't believe
first of all,
you're
just,
first of all, don't tell Isaiah Thomas that Dennis Rodman was the man on that squad.
If you made a Mount Rushmore today of the greatest Pistons of all time, would Dennis Rodman be on it?
And this would be number one?
Would he be on it? Would he be on it? Yes, he would. And if you go to San Antonio, and let's remember that he had 2 years. He had 2 years in San Antonio. He had 2 years in San Antonio. A top-level player, the best at his skill, was joined up with the Bulls for Will Perdue and cash.
Let me show you. Isaiah Thomas, Dennis Rodman, great rebounder, perfect. He's a block. He fit with what Isaiah Thomas did. This wasn't Isaiah Thomas joining the Bulls. This wasn't Gary Payton joining the Bulls.
Dennis Rodman a Hall of Famer?